It goes without saying that this past school year has created challenges for both students and parents. Schools have been open to varying degrees depending upon the individual schools. For middle school and high school students, courses that offer students a way of figuring out what they want to do after high school have been decreased. One of the departments that has taken the biggest hit has been the music education department. Students enrolled in band and choir have not rehearsed together in the same room for more than a year. A parent advisory committee has been created that is lobbying the provincial government in the hopes that Manitoba music students can once again see the inside of a rehearsal room, and students enrolled in band and choir can make music with their fellow students together in the same room. Joining me here over Zoom is Manitoba Band Association Executive Director Chelsea Hebert, Ross Brownlee, who is the band director at Westgate Mennonite Collegiate, and Sherry Lynn Swarchuk, who is the head of the Parent Advisory Committee that wants the province to allow band classes to resume in schools. Chelsea, Ross, and Sherry Lynn, it's nice to have you here over Zoom. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Chris.
So, Ross, I thought I would start with you. Um, you've been teaching band throughout this entire pandemic. What's it been like for you at Westgate?
Hmm. Um, I think each school is a bit unique, so I'm going to say that Westgate was unique. We're a very, very small school. So, unlike most of my colleagues and students across the province, we have had every student every day at the school, which has probably made our ability to alter rehearsals a little bit easier. But when the pandemic started last year, all the students disappeared. Classes were taught like we're meeting right now over Zoom. And as anyone who's tried to play, and we were talking about earlier, playing instruments over Zoom is a very challenging event. There's always a lag, and the sound overloads the abilities of the systems. So we found ways in which the students would mute themselves. I would play, they'd play with me, but I basically went to a presentation-based type of teaching. We tried conducting. We did some really neat history lessons. We did some virtual bands to pretty big success, but that was also, we had just been rehearsing. We'd been live, and the virtual was easier when we'd been live and could do a short break. We touched base a little bit in June and played a concert outside in our parking lot, and it was really fun and very rough. Then when we came back in September, it was fabulous. We had every single class with every kid out on the front yard. We were dealing with diesel trucks going by. For several days, there was a whole bunch of tree pruning, so it was band and chainsaw. A couple of times, some dogs ran away from their owners and tangled around the instruments in the band out in the front yard. Um, Duets with geese were pretty common, and it was really challenging because there's just so much environmental noise. And then, boy, the wind and music stands is not a good combination. We would have things just flying all over the place. But the kids were game. We were very excited. We did that up until the third week of October, and everybody was just waiting for these instrument masks and shields to come in at the school. And we'd ordered them in very early September. We got them, I think, the third week of October, and then the next day, literally, we were given the order to shut down. So at that point, we came inside, and there were no more instruments.
Uh, and so you've been essentially teaching over Zoom for the rest of the school year.
I haven't. This is where I probably differ from most of my colleagues in that I have every student. So, and we actually at our school hired an extra music teacher and were given more space, whereas a lot of schools dealt with less space and their music teacher even removed from the role of music and gone into some other way. So I have to say that I'm in a very, very fortunate position. What we've been able to do is take extra space, not mix our cohorts, and for for better for worse, I think we've done some really cool work with percussion. So we've got a whole bunch of mallets going. We've brought in string instruments. A lot of our students play strings. So we're able to go from strictly unpitched percussion to pitched with mallets, strings, and then a whole bunch of our traditional percussion and buckets.
Right.
And we've been able to get up to like 16-part music, which has been really interesting. And for the beginners, we've been able to teach music theory. They've learned how to do ensemble, and we're now doing even 4-part music with our brand new kids. So I'm lucky in that respect, but it is certainly not band.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that the idea of getting a bunch of people in the same room making music together through
Yeah,
and singing
and
through their wind instruments is it's a thing.
it's a thing. And I should mention that my colleague who teaches in the choral department, Vic, has had none of this.
Yeah.
Like they've been just project based, like I think a lot of schools all the way through. So I mean, this has taken a toll on people in so many different ways, and each school is unique, and each has their own story. And but I don't think any of the stories are particularly positive. Although a surprising amount of amazing stuff has gone on, even with this limitation that band directors and choir directors have been given.
Hmm. For many of our listeners, the thought of wind instruments in the same room creates cause for concern, might even give you the heebie-jeebies. Chelsea, I know the Manitoba Association has many resources on their website. And one of the resources that they have are a number of articles that have been researched about the spread of aerosol particles. Can you talk about what some of these studies are and what they found in regards to the transmission of aerosols?
Absolutely. So now that we're more than a year into this, unlike at the very beginning of the pandemic, where Band and Choir very quickly got this bad reputation for being super spreaders, we now have these extensive resources and research available to us. And at the Manitoba Band Association, we're trying to make that available to everybody so that we can all become just a little more informed because it's all so new. So one of those studies is actually commissioned by an international coalition of performing arts organizations, the NBA being one of them, many other organizations in Canada and the US. And so they released a third round of results in late November that just showed that there's been a significant reduction in aerosol generation with the mitigations in place. And they even explicitly state in those results that if the mitigation steps are followed, they believe students can continue to be engaged in performing arts activities this year. And so the 5 mitigations that they bring up there are the use of masks, both for the player and for the instrument. And an instrument mask is called a bell cover. The social distance between players, time between rehearsals, so there's time for aerosols to disperse, time between rehearsals so that a full air exchange can happen in the rehearsal space, and then of course extensive hygiene, sanitizing spaces and instruments, etc. And so in the study, they were able to monitor college bands in the fall that were still operating in the US. And there was even there numerous examples of students with the virus. And through contact tracing, they were able to show that there was zero transmission during music activity with these mitigations.
It's very, very interesting. Yeah, I was on the MBA website and some of the studies, I was actually myself as a wind player surprised at how little the aerosols actually travel. And I was reading a study that if you use bell covers and face masks with slits cut in them, it can cut down the traveling up to 60 to 80%, which is just it's remarkable. So I want to be clear, all three of you are not against the measures that are currently in place with other places like social distancing and whatnot. You want that to happen in the band room as well, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'd say it's part of our new normal for band. In the same way in our everyday lives we're wearing masks, I think for sure we should see that in the band room as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want my daughter to get COVID. I'm not advocating for that.
Right. Yeah. And if proper measures are taken, then it's conceivable that it can happen. I'm curious, Ross and Chelsea, maybe you can answer this. What's going on in other provinces in regards to band? Are they offering band in other provinces, or what's happening across the country?
If you'd like, I can jump in, Russ.
Sure,
Yeah,
Chelsea. Yeah.
You start. That's
And
great.
so it's a real mixed bag across the country. In the same way, it's a real mixed bag in terms of what each province's COVID-19 situation is at any given time. So what I did actually is reach out to all of our all the other band associations in the country just to see what's going on there. And it's just a vast variety. For example, Saskatchewan is allowed with mitigations, but the schools are making their own decisions based on how much spacing they can have and how they can actually meet and implement those mitigations. Alberta has a strange restriction in place where they're allowing some performance activity and they have restrictions around that. Ontario is completely different based on their school boards. And the East Coast was actually the last to stop playing, but when they were in the Atlantic bubble. And so just recently, when their restrictions changed, did their wind playing restrictions change. So I'd say with that update across the country, just knowing that no province is the same and all of our restrictions for whatever we're doing is different. I'd like to bring up just the examples of what we're doing here in Manitoba, because we don't have to go far to see examples of how this can be done and how it can be done with mitigations in place. We can see that the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra has been providing us with great online concerts where they're playing distance with mitigations at the Centennial Concert Hall. We've seen at all the universities, at the U of M, Brandon, and CMU. All those music departments are also able to carry on with education, again, with smaller group sizes and everything else we've already talked about.
Right. Charlene, I want to turn it over to you. You're the head of the parent advisory group that is trying to lobby the province to get band back in schools. And I understand you have a daughter who's enrolled in band. Can you tell us about what her year has been like in regards to band?
Yes, so my daughter is a grade 12 French horn player at Vincent Massey Collegiate in Winnipeg. And we understand that things had to change when COVID hit. But it was in October of this year that she really got down and said that she was really upset that she said, remember last year when everyone felt bad for the grade 12s because their year abruptly ended and no graduation, no final performance, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's worse for us this year because we haven't had the chance to play all year. And this was her final year to work with her band teachers, to solo and to shine, and she can't go back. It's just done. Yeah. So she buried herself in an orchestral recording of a movement for Rosa Parks. And she said that helped her get through. So you have to remember that with these band students, music is their solace, their way of being. It comforts them. And there's also little band communities within the school that with these cohorts and whatnot, those band communities have just been absolutely demolished. And so at that point, when she started to feel down and I started to see, her feeling depressed, that I decided I needed to do something. So I contacted some fellow band parents and through word of mouth learned about other students having similar experiences across the city and the province. My child's principal thinks it's okay because they're still offering band, but this is not band. For these band kids, we have taken them out of their niche. It's like taking a fish out of water. She's got nothing left. Yeah. And going forward, she was asked to play the last post for her school on the trumpet. And our family learned how fun it was to listen to the trumpet and horn, how long it takes just to get perfection. So she was, I spent hours holding a microphone. And then she had to apply to university because she's going into grade 12. And our kitchen became her rehearsal space. If you think of it for these kids, they have nowhere else to practice. And so for her university auditions, she tried 20, 30 times, I'm not exaggerating, to get that amateur audition tape right. And with no in-person help from her instructors, she was on her own. So now she's worried about having the skills to move forward into university. And she's missed a year of guided instruction.
Mm-hmm. I know for myself, growing up as a band kid, and Ross and Chelsea, you're probably the same. For me, band was everything in school. I mean, it was my social network. It was, it gave me a purpose. It gave me a place to go. I was reading one of the testimonials on the open letter that was sent out. And one parent raised a good point. Their child had places to go. There were rehearsals, either jazz band or concert band rehearsals. And now that there's nothing, they're essentially sitting in their room playing video games. And maybe not doing the most productive activities.
That's a very common practice for a lot of the band kids that I know. And the issue is that we're not asking for band to return the way that we may traditionally think of band rooms. We're asking for it to be returned in socially distanced ways, very, very tight restrictions, so that these kids have a place to practice, just like the athletes and other types of um, practices that go on in our city.
Mhm. Uh, Ross and Sherilyn, I'm just out of curiosity, are there organized sports going on at Massey and Westgate?
Yes, actually, my daughter took phys ed last term, and she actually had to take herself out of a gym class. I gave her permission because they were playing a ball game, passing the ball. It was very sweaty in there, and I can't imagine how it's any different. As well, dance classes resumed in the school all along,
Mm.
dance classes. My daughter actually is a dancer, so I want to be careful what I say here, but I don't see any difference between any of these activities. It's an equity issue.
Yeah. Ross, how about you? Is there organized sports going on at Westgate?
Not organized sports in the sense of intramurals, and all of the after school sports have been canceled since last year. They got hit hard, like the music programs. However, I've been teaching phys ed this year. There's interesting, no jazz band, so I go over to phys ed. So the usual phys ed classes happen, but I was brought in again so that we could make smaller groups, and every time we take kids outside. So we've been really adjusting. It's not the same phys ed program as it was, and there's been terrific efforts made to keep the kids apart. But kids are kids, right? Like, they
Yeah.
don't like being apart. And just, I will say that, so the gym has been empty. It used to start off and at 6 in the morning, and it would shut down around 10 or 11 at night here. It's done at 3 o'clock when school's done now. It's a very bizarre thing. However, next week, I saw that they're starting small training programs. It's not organized sports, but they're allowed 3-on-3. So there is a door opening for sports here, and that has been mandated by our government. So again, I think each school is a little different, because Sherry, it sounds a little bit different where your daughter is at, and it's funny. They're all a little different, but definitely there is phys ed going on here, and now the commencement of small training in organized sports, but not teams and not intramurals.
It seems a little counterintuitive to me. I mean, you've got a sweaty. I mean, you sweat when you exercise, and if you're in like if you're having a dance class, for example, as opposed to a band class, I don't know. It just seems a little contradictory. Anyway, um, once band is offered in person again, Ross and Chelsea, are you predicting that there's going to be a rebuilding period here in Manitoba in regards to band programs?
I'll take that one.
Yeah,
It's
Ross.
I've put so much thought into it and talked to colleagues in band and choir. There has been so much loss, and what a lot of people don't realize. So everybody's fully a year behind now. That just is what it is, and I think we can pick up where we were, but that means that the senior kids are a year lower. And what I have really thought about is how much our younger kids learn from our older ones. So these superstars in grade 12, the role that they play without even realizing it for the younger students, they're heard in concerts, they're heard in rehearsals. Even the kids come in and out of the band room and they hear what they need to attain to be at a certain level. That's gone. And now our top ensembles, of course, they're going to be they're a year behind, but physically, I mean, it takes so much control from your core, your embouchure, the air, even mentally, how to do all of this stuff. We're starting again. It would be like someone who became an elite athlete and then completely stopped for a year, and then started again. When they start doing their sport, it's not going to come back right away. You have to build all your systems and your endurance and remind yourself how to do it. we're in that situation with all of the musicians, and it's going to I anticipate that it'll be a full 6 year cycle from beginning band to grade 12 before we can get back to what we're at. That's my personal feeling about the program I'm in, and I think a lot of the my colleagues would agree with that.
Mhm. Are there any indications as to what enrollment would be like for beginner band students, students who are going into grade 6 or grade 7? Chelsea or Ross?
I know a lot of people are very concerned because again it's that peer teaching. So how many times do we go visit our younger feeder schools and take our bands, and the kids get really excited by that. The younger kids, wow, I'd love to be in band. I remember so clearly being in elementary school, and the older band came, and I don't even think they were particularly good, but I was just jaw dropped. It's like, I can't wait for this. I want to be in the band. And we don't have the opportunity to go and show our stuff and allow the kids to be interested. Now we can still go and talk to them, and I think it's maybe not so far gone that the kids will forget, but everybody has an uphill challenge here, a pretty significant one. And we mustn't forget the students in this situation. They've got that uphill challenge. The one thing I'll say is that everybody's in the same boat. So, those moving on to university, those coming into a beginning band program, those entering senior band for the first time, all the instructors know exactly what's happened. It's not like we're isolated, so at least everybody can adjust accordingly. But there still are standards that one has to meet that are going to be trickier, having lost all this time.
Right. This has just been super interesting. Um, Chelsea, where can people go to find out more about some of these research that has been happening in regards to having band in schools? Where can people go if they want to find out more information?
They can head to the Manitoba Band Association website, which is www.mbband.org. And our advocacy page is mbband.org/advocacy. You can also find it in the drop-down menu on top. And across the web page, there's contact us forms. My email is up there. We've got links to all the research we've referenced today, and we're constantly updating those links with anything new. So we're encouraging people to send us links to research, send us feedback and ideas on how we can be some more supportive of the community as well. All of the materials from Sherry Lynn and the parent advocacy group are up there. So if anyone was to contact me, I will send everything Sherry Lynn's way so it'll get to the right channels.
And I just wanted to jump in here as well and say that anybody who is interested in supporting our band open letter to resume indoor band playing can find it on the Manitoba Band Association website, as Chelsea mentioned, and we look forward to hearing from you.
And for all our Classic 107 listeners out there, I'll embed a link to the Manitoba Band Association's website on our website. So for all of our listeners out there, you go to classic107.com, you'll find a link exactly to the pages that Chelsea and Sherry Lynn have just spoken about. Ross, Chelsea, Sherry Lynn, this has just been great. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks
for the opportunity.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you all.
Go band!